So let's take a look at the Chiefs defense, the first team defense in the week 2 preseason game at Seattle. Full disclosure, this is not going to be a lot of fun. Not as bad as like the clip I did breaking down the Eagles pass rush in Super Bowl 59. It's not that bad, but it's still not going to be that fun. Of note, this is the first team defense, but we're missing a couple people. Trent McDuffie, Nick Bolton, Chris Jones, and Jalen Watson did not play any snaps in this game. I believe Drew Tranquil also did not, but that was injury related. Unsure if he would have played snaps had he been healthy. Anyway, let's take a look at all the snaps from the first drive and kind of break down what we can see. Let's start here by noting that the Seahawks are in 21 personnel. They've got 2 running backs and a tight end. And the Chiefs have responded by coming in base. So 4 defensive backs. Since we don't have our starting corners, we've got Nazeeh Johnson and Noel Williams out at corner. The first 2 safeties on the field are Brian Cook and Shamari Connor. Connor continues to be a starting safety in base defense. And then our linebackers, we've got Leo Chanel, our regular Sam, and then Jack Cochran is this one, 43 and 48. Looks so similar. This is Jack Cochran, 43, and Cole Christensen, 48. So 2 backup linebackers. We've got George Karlaftis and Mike Dana at end. Mike Pennell is in at 1 technique, and our 3 technique is Jerry Tillery because Chris Jones is not playing. So let's take a look at this play, and then we can break it down. Seahawks send a receiver in motion, hand it off to Zach Charbonnet, who hits a huge hole and gets a big gain to start. So let's take a look at what was going on here that led to that play. So the Seahawks are looking very Kubiak-y here with Clint Kubiak. They get everyone moving to the left. The center climbs to the second level immediately. And we're trying to figure out who's responsible for what gaps. You can see Leo Chanel clearly seems like he's supposed to be taking the gap outside of the tight end to set the edge. So then you'd imagine that Karlaftis is responsible for this gap here, which would be, this is the A, this is the B, so this would be the C gap in between the tackle and the tight end. The way that they're lined up, though, it's becoming unclear, like, who is supposed to do what here. Like, clearly, Cochran here is either supposed to take the B gap or the A gap, and Tillery is supposed to do the other. But the center ends up climbing up to Cochran. Christensen, I don't know where it's. I'm not really sure. Like, I guess he's taken the A gap on this side. That seems like it's possible, but it becomes kind of unclear. It gets muddy very quickly, and the Chiefs aren't really seeming to be able to sort out who's covering what. They do kind of build a wall, which is nice, but Karlaftis, of all people, seems to be the one that gets washed out, that opens up this hole. And the tight end does a really good job here. Look at the tight end shove Karlaftis to try to get him inside, and then he turns around and seals Chanel. These are 2 of Kansas City's better run defenders, and one guy kind of helps take care of both. That gives him the extra shove, seals off, and that really opens up the gap. And look at that. I mean, a huge hole. This is surprising. Especially it being Chanel and Karlaftis here that are moved aside to create this gap. Those are 2 of Kansas City's like good run defenders, high effort guys. It just makes you wonder if this was one of those games where the defense was not fully present, let's say, because those are not the guys that I expect. Karlaftis is not the guy I'm expecting to be washed out to open up a big hole. And Chanel, we saw him in our film review the first game, just absolutely obliterating gaps, moving people into gaps. So I don't know. Seeing that is a little surprising to me, unless they were trying to do something I didn't realize. In any case, big gain there for a first down. All right, so after giving up that huge run, the Chiefs defense is back at it. Seattle comes out here, this time appearing to be an 11 personnel, although this may be a tight end. I'm not as familiar with Seattle's personnel, so maybe this is 12 personnel, 1 running back and 2 tight ends. Seems like it's probably 12 personnel, partially because the Chiefs have 3 linebackers on the field. The same crew actually is on the field as last time. Johnson and Williams are still here. Cook and Connor still here. Christensen, Cochran, Chanel, Dana, Karlaftis, and then Pennell and Tillery. So let's take a look at what happens on this one. Got Cooper Kupp going in motion. They hand it off to Charbonnet, who kind of sorts through stuff and gets about 5 or 6 on first down. So what happens here? Again, Seattle with a very kind of aggressive run scheme. They're pulling guys. They are double team Pennell here, pull behind, and they're creating a gap. And it really seems like on this play, so if you look at, Pennell is fighting for his life here, trying to hang on. Tillery is getting washed in a little bit, but Dana comes and meets the puller. Chanel comes, and this time it seems like it's very difficult for Christensen, and I think especially Cochran here, to sort through what's going on. I think there are a lot of guys moving. They're seeing the guard come across. They're seeing a puller coming up behind, and it's just taking them a little too long to sort through their gaps, because really they're both kind of handling the same responsibility here and leaving a gap here. I imagine Cochran's got to be here and then Christensen fit here, but they're really struggling to sort through here. And that allows Charbonnet to get a little bit of momentum before Cochran and Cook are able to close and stop. So the first one really, it looked like it was Karlaftis and Chanel. A gap was created between them, but here it looked like it was the linebackers struggling to figure out what was going on. They weren't able to sort through everything and find their fits quickly enough to prevent a positive gain, but better than the first one. Now the Seahawks with a 2nd and short. This time they come out in what appears to be 11 personnel. I believe they've got 1 running back and 1 tight end here. The Chiefs come in with nickel. They add an extra defensive back. Now only 2 linebackers on the field, Cochran and Chanel. And the extra defensive back is Jaden Hicks, who's come out in deep safety. Shamari Connor has come down, rotated down to the slot. So the Chiefs here, let's take a look at the play and then we can break it down. You see Cook and Hicks as deep safeties. There's a drop and quick throw underneath for about just at the first down marker. Are we a little bit short? Yeah, a little bit short. So we end up with a 3rd and short here. So what happened on this play? The Chiefs really just play like a pretty static, uninteresting, but not uncomplicated, I should say, cover 3. So basically you've got Williams with a deep third. You've got Cook with a deep third and Najee Johnson with a deep third. Hicks kind of rotates down, and so you've got 4 zones across. Chanel taking the more flat. 2 hook zones are Hicks and Cochran, and then Shamari Connor taking the flat on this side. So they just kind of drop, static drop, and you've got a curl route just underneath. They basically, the Seahawks run a curl here, and then an in cut behind, and over here you got a flat and then a corner. So they kind of high-low this the underneath defenders both ways. The curl sits right underneath. Since these two got a little depth, Darnold just throws down to the curl and gets it to 3rd and short. You can see it here from the end zone copy. Darnold sends his man in motion, drops back, and fairly simple, just sees the underneath guy. The Chiefs weren't doing anything complicated. They were happy to allow the underneath. Darnold took it, got himself into 3rd. So we skipped the snap. It was a quarterback sneak on 3rd down where the Seahawks got a 1st down. Wasn't that interesting to break down, so we've skipped ahead to the next play. We now have a 1st down. The Seahawks come out here in what looks like 11 personnel. 1 running back, 1 tight end, gets you 11 personnel, and the Chiefs again have matched with their nickel. They've got 5 defensive backs, Najee Johnson, Shamari Connor again down in the slot, Brian Cook, Jaden Hicks, and Noel Williams. They've shuffled the defensive line a little bit. Charles Omenihu has come in for Mike Dana, and instead of Mike Pennell, we've got Marlon Tuipulotu. Linebackers are still Leo Chanel and Jack Cochran. So let's take a look at what Seattle does here. They've sent tight end in motion, Darnold from under center, and they run a pitch to the right. He's able to get good yardage up close to a 1st down, maybe about 8 yards. So what happened to the Chiefs here? First things first, unfortunately, they've got 2 linebackers mugging the A-gaps on a play that's going to the edge. So you already have 2 guys that are out of position, not in their typical position where they might be able to head over and help control the perimeter. So that's step number 1. That's not great. Number 2 is just getting guys out there. So Cook ends up being our edge defender. Connor gets out there from the slot. Karlaftis is on his horse getting over there, but the Chiefs just don't have the numbers to the perimeter. This was when you have the A-gaps mugged up by 2nd level defenders, it's a good time to run something to the perimeter. And again, Karlaftis gets kind of chipped here by a receiver, and then tries to shed and get out there, and the Chiefs just aren't able to hold their line. Here we've got Connor battling a tackle. He's not going to win that one. Karlaftis is trying to get over there, but this is, it really feels like a Seattle team that is ready and, psyched to be there and ready to go, and the Chiefs team playing a little bit flat. And like I said, this play, it's really compounded by the fact that your 2 linebackers are not available on the perimeter here because they're mugging up the A-gap. That complicates things, but Seattle's just moving people here, Karlaftis does a good job. That's a little more of the high effort thing we're used to, chasing him down at the end, but still ends up being about a gain of 8. The Seahawks now have a 2nd and short, and they come out in 21 personnel. They've got 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and the Chiefs respond by going back to their base. So now 4 DBs, the same 4 that were in the base earlier, same 3 linebackers. Omenihu stays on, Tuipulotu stays on, and Karlaftis and Tillery are there. So let's take a look at the play here, and then we'll break it down. Sam Darnold taking the snap from under center. We've got Jackson Smith and Jigma in motion. Darnold throws it out to the flat to Smith and Jigma, who had done an orbit motion. Easy 1st down there. So if we look at this play, it's an interesting design. So Smith and Jigba comes to the backfield and kind of does this orbit motion and comes back out as available in the flat. In the meantime, we've got an out route here, and then after the fake handoff to the running back, he comes and sits here. So with the play action, the linebackers get all drawn in. And then with the running back coming and sitting, it looks like initially, this looks like the Chiefs might be running some like man match principle the way that they shift. Because it looks like they've got Noel Williams over the 1, and then Connor is coming and has eyes on the 2. The safety looking at the 2, so it makes it look like they have some like man match set up here. But then when you get motion, now Connor's dropping back and he's just going to play a deep zone. Noel Williams has the 1, and if you see, you've got Cook kind of creeping over, assuming that he's coming out this way, and maybe he'll come over to be like Najee Johnson's responsibility. So you see the Chiefs shift, and Smith and Jigma gets kind of lost to the man match. It looks like they're anticipating him over on this side of the formation. They've kind of forgotten about him on this side of the formation. Kind of similar to what the Chiefs did to the Eagles in the Super Bowl and Super Bowl 57 at the goal line, where they would kind of send the guy in motion and then bring him back, and they would lose responsibility. It looks like that's kind of what happened here in bringing him back. Cochran seems to be this Christensen seems to be the guy who had the flat responsibility, and he got occupied by the running back coming up and sitting. Although you would think that Cochran would cover that, and Christensen really, it seems like, should have been getting out to the flat, and was, by the time he reacted now, I mean, it's way too late for a wide receiver. Not that Christensen may have been able to cover him anyway, even if he had gotten out there, but nice play design, really confusing the Chiefs here and allowing for an easy first down for Seattle. Seeing it from this perspective, you see all the linebackers step up for the run, then having to scramble when they see play action. And here with Charbonnet coming on the curl, you think that that's his responsibility, and that Christensen needs to be thinking about getting width here with his flat responsibility, but he doesn't get out there quickly enough. And Smith and Jigba gets a first down. Got another Seattle first down, and they come out this time in 11 personnel. Running back, 1 tight end, and so the Chiefs are back in nickel. And again, it's the same setup with Johnson, Connor in the slot, Cook and Hicks deep, and Noel Williams on the other boundary. They've shuffled around their defensive linemen again. Looks like Dana is back with Omenahue, and Omar Norman Lott has come into the game for the first time, and he's there alongside Tillery. So Norman Lott is playing with a 1 technique. All right, so let's take a look at what happens here. Got a snap out of shotgun and a handoff, probing the right side, and again, a fairly healthy gain, although not an explosive run this time. So let's take a look at what happened here. See, they motion the tight end over to the right side. This is a little more of the Leo Chanel that we're used to, right? And we see the guard trying to get to the next second level, and just look at this. Bam! Oh my goodness. This is what we're used to more out of this guy. Wow. Just taking the guard and tossing him to the ground. Norman Lott's trying to hold his own. Cochran gets the double. And look at Chanel. So Chanel tosses the guard. Bam. Then he's coming through, not quite able to make the tackle, but he does force the running back outside another gap. Cochran's getting doubled and just absolutely moved back, and Omenahue comes to pursue. I mean, it's a much better effort by the Chiefs here on this run snap. Really starting with, Chanel right here. This is much more a Leo Chanel snap that we're used to. and some much better pursuit than we were used to, too. One reason why this one wasn't an explosive run. Now we're at about 2nd and 4, I believe, and the Seahawks come out in, well, this is either 21 or 12. I think this is a fullback. I don't know, again, the Seahawks personnel that well, but it's either 2 running backs and a tight end, or 1 running back and 2 tight ends. So 21 or 12 personnel. Chiefs are here in base. Again, the same base. Cook and Connor back. Our trio of linebackers. And Williams and Johnson on the outside. The line appears, let's see, we've got Omenihu and Dana. Tui Pelotu's back with Tillery. So Norman Lott is off the field. So we've got Darnold taking a snap, faking a handoff. He rolls to his left and hits the fullback out of the backfield for a big gain here. Let's take a look at what happened on this one. This is actually a pretty cool play design. So after the play action, which of course, since the Chiefs have been playing the run so poorly, the play action gets the linebackers up pretty quickly. But after the play action, you see the Chiefs are in man coverage, and they run this combination of routes on the left side here very nicely with this receiver and with the fullback. So we got Noel Williams with man coverage on the receiver coming up, and the fullback, they kind of bring him in and run like a pivot route behind the line of scrimmage. Connor is manned up on the fullback. So what Connor is going to do, so watch Connor on the snap and how he's mirroring his man. He sees the pivot, so he comes in. Additionally, he's, looking at the play action, so that's going to bring him in even more. So the pivot route plus the play action all brings him in. I mean, honestly, the pivot probably looks like to him that the fullback is blocking. So he's coming in, and then when he realizes it's play action and that's his responsibility, look at the timing here. It's a perfect pick route. So he gets picked off right there, and so there's just nobody there. This is his man, and look how far away he is. That's great play design from Clint Kubiak. So much more creative than I'm used to seeing in the preseason. Normally teams play so vanilla, but look at that. A nice little play design to get the fullback open. And a big gain, another first down for Seattle. You could see it from this perspective. Watch how much this looks like a run. Look, you got pull, fullback coming in, Connor's coming in, linebackers are all coming up. Everybody sees a run. Connor realizes now, and look at the timing. This route's coming right by him. He's got to sift through that traffic to try to catch him. No way he's going to do it. Easy first down for Seattle. Pretty cool play design. All right, so now checking out the next play. The Seahawks lined up a little heavier here. They're in 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends. So the Chiefs return to their base. Again, same corner safety alignment, same linebackers. Looks like we've got Omenihu, Dana, Tillery, and this looks like Tui Pelotu. I can't really tell. Yeah, I think it is. All right, so let's take a look at the play. They motion Cooper Kupp in, setting him tight. Run a play action to the left, roll right, and they hit a tight end crossing the formation for a nice gain of about 8. If this play looks familiar to you, we can see it here from the end zone view. Look at what they're showing the Chiefs here. They're showing the play action this way, everybody's flowing that way, and just behind the formation they get one man leaking over so they can boot over and try to out-leverage the defense on this side. If it looks familiar to you, we actually saw this from the Chiefs, a similar kind of concept last year in the game at Cleveland. Let's see if this looks familiar. This is from the first quarter at Cleveland last year. Chiefs run a fake motion to the right, and then Mahomes throws it to Juju for the touchdown. So the difference here is the Seahawks ran a play action just to the running back in this direction. But what the Chiefs did is they actually had Pacheco looking like a lead blocker and had a fake reverse to Worthy. So they get the action going this way. They fake the reverse to Worthy. And again, same idea. You have a guy in line or lined up tight, running behind the formation across. Juju came across here behind the formation, out-leveraged the defense, and Mahomes got it to him for the touchdown. So a wrinkle on the same concept that the Seahawks just used on that play. And now for the final snap of the first team defense from this preseason game. We've got Seattle again lined up big here. In this case, they are actually in 13 personnel. They've got one running back, they've got 3 tight ends, and then the 1 wide receiver. And the Chiefs come out in base once more. Same personnel. Dana's here, Amenahu's here, and it looks like Tuipulotu and Jerry Tillery. So here's the snap. They've got motion over, handoff, and just a walk-in touchdown for Zach Charbonnet. So what happened here? A couple things went wrong. First of all, there's a big mix-up in the secondary. The Chiefs don't run their corners across the formation like this, and Noel Williams appears to be confused. Because if you notice, they've got motion, and over here, Cook and Johnson are adjusting to it. Johnson is ready to handle the receiver coming across. So Noel Williams should really be staying put over here. But he runs across the formation and ends up running himself completely out of position to a run that's going in that direction. Cole Christensen comes to be like the force guy, and he gets a sniffer come in to block him right here and completely clears him out. And the Chiefs just are not... This is not their day when it comes to defensive effort and holding stout here. Got Dana right in here, Christensen, and there's just a huge gap that's created between them. Dana gets moved over. Noel Williams is gone from the second level, but I mean, I know it's cliche, but it really seemed like one team came to play in this situation and the other did not, because Mike Dana, again, a good run defender. Christensen, not as renowned for his prowess, but this is just look at the movement here that the Seattle line is getting. I mean, the Chiefs are making them look like all pros, and that was it for the first team defense. It was not pretty. Like we said, we're missing a couple people. Chris Jones was not there. McDuffie and Watson weren't there. And Nick Bolton wasn't there. And so the question really is, for the run defense, are Bolton and Jones that important? Or is it a combination of them being out plus the Chiefs just not really coming to play for this one? I mean, this was very much... These guys that we're talking about are guys that are pretty much guaranteed on the roster, right? I mean, the one who you could say maybe not would be Marlon Tuipulotu. He would be the only one. But defensive tackle is so thin this year for the Chiefs that you imagine he's probably going to make the roster too. So these weren't guys that are like really fighting for roster spots, and it really seems like the Chiefs treated this year preseason game 2 like they typically treat preseason game 3, because Andy has already said the starters are going to get more run in the third one this year, which is a departure from the norm. So maybe the Chiefs, this just wasn't their best effort day, but it wasn't great on defense. Didn't look fantastic. So let's take a look at the Chiefs' first team offense in the Week 2 preseason game at Seattle. So in this game, the important offensive starters that were not playing. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce were given the night off, as was right tackle Jawan Taylor. I would imagine the Jawan Taylor part is at least somewhat due to load management with him, because he's clearly been dealing with some kind of injury to his knee. The reports were that he was playing with it last season. He got surgery this offseason, and that he's not still quite 100%. And that's why Jalen Moore has been rotating in so much at right tackle. So they gave Jalen Moore the start this week, and Jawan Taylor was out. Everybody else played at least a little bit in this game. And we're going to take a look at the first drive, which had the entire first offensive line minus Jawan Taylor, with Jalen Moore at right tackle. So this is their first play, starting at the 20-yard line. The Chiefs come out in 11 personnel. There's one running back, Isaiah Pacheco, one tight end, Noah Gray, and the three wide receivers are Rashee Rice, Juju Smith-Schuster, and then Xavier Worthy lined up outright. Let's take a look at this play, and then we'll break it down. We've got the Chiefs in the shotgun. Minshew takes the snap and drops back. Doesn't see anything he likes, and so he comes up and slides after getting about 5 yards on a scramble. Of note, the Chiefs had actually tried to run a play before this, and it was a false start by Trey Smith. So it looked like they were trying to do some kind of wide receiver screen to Rashee Rice. But so this is a 1st and 15 play. And so what the Chiefs are trying to do here is they're running kind of a flood concept against the zone, where they're going to get Xavier Worthy running a deep route. They're going to have Juju in an intermediate level, and then Rashee Rice coming in on a short route. And so the main idea is this: against the team playing zone, you get the corner dropping back with the deep route. And so then with Juju and Rice, you can take the defender that is responsible underneath here and kind of put them in conflict, make them have to decide whether they're going to drop back or whether they're going to take the shallow route. Andy likes these flood concepts a lot. The problem being that a lot of times now when teams aren't playing pure zone coverage, they're playing more man match. They're able to increase their numbers over in the area where you're running the flood concept, so it's a lot harder to high-low single defenders out there. Instead of two people being out there, you might have a third, and that's actually exactly what happened on this play, is that the Seahawks ran a blitz, but it wasn't actually a blitz. It was a simulated pressure because they sent one from here and dropped the defensive end, so they're still rushing 4. And the defensive end actually became an extra shallow defender against the flood concept, so instead of having this person in conflict, having to decide about Juju intermediate or Rashee Rice short, we have an added defender with the defensive end dropping. So they've got 3 over 3, and you don't really have any advantage with the flood anymore. So Minshew looks over there to the right initially, then sees 3 on 3, doesn't like it, even though I would argue that initially Rashee Rice, he has won this, and you'd be getting a modest gain out of it, but especially with the defender lurking over the top. But there is an option to throw the ball there. He then turns back left, doesn't have anything. The line kind of clears out. Humphrey and Kingsley with a double team on the defensive tackle clear this nice alley. They actually give him a pretty decent pocket. So Minshew just ends up stepping up and running for 5 yards. So we'll see this from the end zone view. And again, what the Seahawks are doing here, they've got 4 down, but they end up blitzing from here and dropping. And the way that the Chiefs end up covering this is Simmons blocks the end, Pacheco comes in blitz pickup, Kingsley and Creed double team here, Trey Smith is one-on-one here, and Jalen Moore has no one to block because his guy ended up dropping off. So, as you see here, great blitz pickup by Pacheco. Hits him square on, doesn't let the blitzer, and dies a slow death there, maintaining the integrity of the pocket enough with Minshew shifting over. Josh Simmons does a good job getting over there toward the end. This is a critique that I first saw from Mitchell Schwartz. He was saying one of the things about Joshua Simmons is that he doesn't kind of move into the body of the rusher. So a couple people have said this next thing that I think I remember Matthew Lane from Kansas City Sports Network saying that Joshua Simmons, he's very athletic, and one of the things he does is he kind of reacts to what the defender is doing. He doesn't really strike first. So if you notice, he kind of comes back in his set and is waiting to read and react. But what Mitchell Schwartz's point was is he kind of takes his hands to the outside and uses this technique pretty often, and it's always kind of on the borderline of something that might draw a holding penalty. I mean, this one, really, the optics on that one don't look great. It doesn't really look like his hands are in the frame. This is the kind of thing that you've seen called holding before. So that's one thing to watch with Simmons, is whether he's able to vary his technique, A, by just getting into the defender a little earlier, and B, by getting into his body rather than kind of using his hands to the outside. He does a good job of controlling defenders, but you do wonder whether this kind of thing is going to get flagged at an inopportune time for the Chiefs. For Kingsley here, the way that they've got it, if you notice in pass protection, and as you know, Kingsley in pass protection was a topic of conversation in this game, and we'll certainly get into it in this film review. But one way that they protect him a lot is they have Creed sliding over to him, and the two of them do a good job on this play, and Minshew's able to slide over. Trey Smith and Jalen Moore are 2-on-1 here because the end drops. So all in all, a good job by the line, maintaining the pocket for Minshew and kind of clearing out a nice space for him so that when he doesn't like what he sees, he's able to bail and get a first down. So a nice rep from the offensive line. Josh Simmons' technique remains to be seen, and we will have a lot to say about Kingsley going forward in this film review. All right, so our next snap here is about 2nd and 10 now, after that 5-yard gain on 1st and 15. Chiefs are in shotgun, and this time they come out in 12 personnel. They've got one running back, Isaiah Pacheco. The two tight ends are Noah Gray and then Jared Wiley. The wide receivers are Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. So let's take a look at this play real quick, and then we'll break it down. We've got shotgun with the two tight ends to the left, and we've got Isaiah Pacheco over to the left as well. Minshew takes the snap, fakes a handoff, and drops back. As he rolls right, he throws to Jared Wiley coming across the formation for a gain of about 5 or 6. So let's break this play down and see what happened. So the route combination here, again, we've got Worthy clearing out, and Rashee Rice's route is a little tough to tell because he kind of gets... he and Witherspoon get kind of tangled up at the stem of the route, but what it looks like is he's trying to drive in and then break this route out. It's just that Witherspoon sits on the outside of the route. We can look at it real quick. So if you watch the progression here, he's coming, and it looks like his goal right here is to break this to the sideline. But Witherspoon's right there with him and kind of gets in the way and makes this kind of a muddy route for Rice, who then ultimately tries to break it out late. On the other side, and then I should mention Pacheco coming out into the flat on that side. So that's what's happening from the right side here. We've got deep, we've got like pushing this in and then trying to break out at the sticks. We've got Pacheco swinging out to the flat. And then Jared Wiley comes and is running a dig across, and then Noah Gray leaks out very late into the flat, kind of mirroring Pacheco. And so the Seahawks here are in man coverage. So Worthy is able to occupy his man and keep the safety deep. Rice isn't able to beat Witherspoon's coverage here, but look at Wiley. I feel like this is prognostically really good on this dig route here. Look at the separation he's able to gain right there on that dig. Cuts it sharply. He's actually running right at the sticks. And look at that separation he created. A nice window for Minshew to be able to throw to. If he can run routes like that against linebackers and safeties, that will be huge for his ability to make it onto the field. You know, he's somebody that was pretty interesting coming out of the draft last year, and then he got hurt. And so it's unclear what the Chiefs are going to get from him, especially with the tight end room looking pretty good with Kelsey and Gray, and then Robert Tonyan looking pretty good in the preseason so far. So it's nice to see Wiley flashing as well. Also notable that Wiley's out here playing with the ones and Tonyan was not. The other thing I really liked about this, I mean, look at all this. Look at the separation he has at this point when Minshew is deciding to throw. And that's really great. And the other thing I think he did a really good job of, even coming horizontally on a route, is look at him bend back toward the ball. I mean, he didn't have to because he was so wide open, but this is great practice, right? To come back toward the ball to prevent a defender from undercutting you if they're trailing. So all in all, I feel like this was a very promising play from Wiley with the way that he was able to create separation and the way that he ran that route in a quarterback-friendly way, coming back to the ball to make sure that he would be the guy that could make this catch and making it a third and manageable. So now from the end zone view, let's look at what happened on this one. I think first of all, Noah Gray is in to chip. And I think one thing that Joshua Simmons has shown a good tendency of doing is understanding that, okay, I've got chip help on the outside, so I don't need to cheat too far to the outside. In fact, that'll mess with the chip. And what happens when you chip somebody from the outside? They tend to bounce in. So watch Joshua Simmons at the beginning of this rep. He's covering more inside because he knows he's got help outside. I don't need to worry so hard about being beat outside. So initially he looks kind of out of position. But then, boom, he gets the chip. Unfortunately, this is a tough one because the defender just gets kind of rocketed right back into him. And again, we see Simmons with those hands outside, which is I'm just worried about how refs are going to call that, you know? Like, I know as a Chiefs fan, if I was watching an opposing offensive lineman doing this to our defensive end, I'd be a little unhappy about it. Now, it is one thing when you've got your kind of back turned to the offensive lineman. It makes it a little difficult, like, to understand, you know, where are we talking hands being outside. But again, you know, the technique he uses is he keeps his hands really wide, and I do wonder if there are going to be times when defenders, as long as they're not like trying to pull a rip move, in which case you can almost clothesline a guy and not be flagged in the NFL. But if we have a lot of this, I just wonder how many flags are going to be thrown by these officials standing back. To make matters worse for Simmons in this case, he kind of bumps into Kingsley's defender as Kingsley's blocking over here, and he ends up falling. But all in all, it's still a good enough rep, right? His guy didn't get to the quarterback. He stays inside, allows the chip to happen. He manages a chip when he gets a guy bounced right back into him, and then unfortunately goes right into a defender and takes a seat. But then, like, looking over and seeing how Kingsley performed here. Kingsley, and this was a rep where he had a little help from Creed to start. Dying a slow death, right? You know, it's not I think Kingsley has a lot of strength, but he does seem a little, and I'm not the first person to make this point, but it does seem like his balance is not ideal. For a guy as athletic as he is, it is hard for him to kind of maintain his base, it seems like. I mean, he did well enough on this play. You got to give him credit. Like, it was laborious, but he made it happen. You know, he kept Minshew clean. And then Creed just continues to be excellent. Like, the way that he's able to initially give some help to Kingsley, redirect his man wide, and then to stay available as Simmons runs into Kingsley's man, and then his defender comes back around, Creed is right there. Trey Smith does a good job right here, staying between his man and the quarterback, and Jalen Moore with a good rep as well. So all in all, like, it wasn't the prettiest from especially the left side, but they made it work and kept Minshew clean long enough for him to... He's waiting here for this. You see Wiley's feet. Wiley clear of the underneath hook defender in the robber, kind of in the cover one. Gets his window to throw. Wiley comes back to the ball. I like it. It's definitely encouraging from Wiley, and we'll see if he can show up like that on tape, getting that kind of separation. That is exciting. On their first third down in the preseason Week 2 contest at Seattle, the Chiefs ran a play concept that was a nice wrinkle on something that they do a lot and is really popular across the NFL. So let's take a look at it. The Chiefs come out here lined up in 11 personnel. They've got one running back, Isaiah Pacheco, and their tight end is out here on the right. That's Noah Gray. The wide receivers lined up here. This looks like Xavier Worthy, Jalen Royals, and Juju Smith-Schuster. So let's take a look at the play, and then we'll break it down. We've got Minshew in shotgun. He's got 3 wide to the left, and the tight end is over to the right. Juju then motions over to the right to make it a 2x2 set. Minshew takes the snap and swings a quick one out to Isaiah Pacheco, who runs down the field for a huge gain, getting a first down on 3rd and about 5. So what is this play concept, and how is it a wrinkle on what we're used to teams seeing? So against man coverage, and some teams run this even against zone, but the Chiefs especially have been very selective about using it against man, and it's really designed as a man-beating coverage, or a man-beating play. Lots of teams run mesh, which... I'm sure many people understand the basic concept of mesh is you have crossing routes across the middle. One person oftentimes is supposed to set a pick for another. So the idea is that you have a man running with each of these guys, one man running with this person, one man running for this person, and you might even have a robber in the middle of the field. So hopefully with the two of them crossing, one person is looking to kind of rub, or defenders would say pick, the other guy's man, so that hopefully you can have somebody running free across the field. So lots of variations of mesh that teams like to run, one of which is mesh with a sit route. And so that would be kind of having crossers come across, and then your third guy comes and sits underneath. And so you can read the mesh, and some will teach to read the sit route deep first and then come down to the mesh, or maybe you look at the mesh first and then come to your sit route over the top. So another wrinkle off of this is what they call mesh rail. And so, mesh, you can have like multiple things with the mesh route. It doesn't have to be a sit route. The Chiefs have had other variations. Like they used to have Tyreek Hill run a deep over with mesh. So they would have like this mesh concept, and the other guy would be, Tyreek Hill would be lined up here, actually inside of the mesh concept. So when Juju was back here, what they used to do with Tyreek is they would have mesh here and Tyreek run a deep over across the field. So they actually read the deep over first and then come back down to the mesh. Anyway, the mesh sit is one of the variations, and that I brought it up first because that's what Juju is doing on this play. He's coming and sitting. So they have, this mesh concept and then a sit route over the top. Well, then you have a variation called mesh rail, in which you run mesh. But the nice thing about creating this conflict here and a lot of traffic in the middle to try to make it hard for defenders to run across, oftentimes there's a linebacker in the middle field who's responsible for the running back. So as you're creating traffic, you've got the mesh route and you've got the sit route coming across. You then send the running back out on a rail route. Idea being that it takes a minute for his defender to get out there, and that he can pop right open. If your receivers on this side are coming in this direction, their men are looking inside, so they're not covering the sideline. This guy's trying to get to the sideline, and your rail route can pop open. And so this becomes the first read on a mesh rail. And so the Chiefs are doing a variation of a mesh rail. They're not actually running mesh after all that discussion. They're running pivot routes or whip routes. So I guess people are calling this pivot rail. So it's a variation on that popular mesh rail concept where normally they have the routes coming like this. Well, instead they have pivot routes coming like this, and they've got Pacheco coming out on the rail. And as you can see, Minshew looks over to Pacheco first. That's his first read right there, and you can see why he pops open. We've got man coverage here on Juju's sit route. We've got man coverage on the whip route, and then the man responsible for Pacheco is starting in the middle of the field. And so he's got to navigate this traffic to get out there, and he doesn't in time, which allows Pacheco to get a nice healthy gain after the catch. And so teams also do the timing of this play differently. The Chiefs on this tend to just get the ball out quickly. They want the ball to the receiver with as much open space, especially a guy that has burst like Pacheco does. And boy, does it look like he's got his burst again. If you see him running down the field, it really looks like he's got some juice that he didn't toward the end of last year. In fact, it really reminds me of what he looked like week 1 and early week 2 before he got injured. In fact, let's take a look at that real quick for comparison. So here we are back in week 1 of 2024. We don't have to break down the entire play because that's not the point here. The point is really comparing Pacheco's movement. So if we look at this play, it's not like the mesh rail or the pivot rail we were just talking about. This is more of a kind of deep concept with Pacheco leaking out late, and Mahomes finds him on a dump off. But look at Pacheco here on this play. So Mahomes drops the ball, dumps it off to him. He's got to make a man miss and get as much as he can. And just look at the burst that he had. Like this, we didn't see as much later in the year when he came back from injury. He got hurt in week 2. And so seeing that, it really, this mesh rail play that we just broke down really reminds me of Pacheco back then. And man, if Pacheco has the kind of juice that he was displaying before he got injured in week 2 last year, that'll be a huge boost to the explosiveness prospects that the offense has, because as we know, the offense really struggled with explosive plays last year. It would be nice to have the ability to have some of that coming from the running back position this year. But anyway, back to 2025. It really does look like seeing Pacheco make this catch. I mean, I really like the way he's moving, how quickly he's covering ground. We know he kind of runs angrily, as Louis Riddick says he runs typewriter feet, I think is the way he puts it. People say he runs like he's angry at the ground, but it's nice to see that he's covering a lot of ground as well again, and I hope that that's what it looks like as we go through this season. All right, and then there's not as much to look at from the offensive line perspective on this play, just given how quickly the ball came out. But you see Juju run in motion. You see quick sets from the offensive line. Again, not asked to do anything too complicated. Hold up for just a quick drop back. I don't know that there's a ton of note there. I mean, Jalen Moore got moved back, but again, there's not much, we're not, it doesn't look like he was going to be able to re-anchor here, and so had the rail not been open, this might have been problematic, but it was a quick play, not much asked of from the line, and a nice play with that kind of pivot wrinkle on the mesh rail concept. Now we'll take a look at the ensuing first down play. The Chiefs come out in 11 personnel. They've got Carson Steele at running back. Pacheco's night is done after that reception. Jared Wiley is their one tight end. So that gets you 11 personnel with one running back and one tight end. This looks like Juju Smith-Schuster down here. This is Jalen Royals over here. And up top, who is that? Oh, that's Tyquan Thornton up there. So we've got Juju down here, Jared Wiley, Jalen Royals, and then Tyquan Thornton up here. So let's take a look at the play real quick, and then we'll break it down. Got Minshew in the shotgun, takes a snap, hands it off to Carson Steele, who's met pretty much right at the line for a minimal gain. So let's take a look at what's going on. There's actually quite a bit happening on this play here. First of all, if you notice down here at this part of the screen, there is a bubble screen action here. So this is set up like an RPO. So you see Royals coming out, looking back, and you've got Wiley and Juju up there as blockers. And they actually have numbers on this. They have got 2 blockers for 2 defenders. So if they had kind of decided on this, this is doable here. They have favorable numbers to run the pass concept. However, it doesn't look like Minshew was even reading it whatsoever, right? He's reading this defensive end on the right side, on his right, like a zone read run play, right? So he's reading the end to decide whether I hand it or keep it to run. I don't know if maybe pre-snap he decided he wasn't going here for some reason based on the look that he was given, but it does not look like during the play Minshew is even considering the pass option. So it's almost like a triple option play, right? There are 3 things Minshew theoretically could do. He could throw this here, he could hand it off to Carson Steele, or he could hold this and run himself. But like I said, it seems like he's only considering the latter 2 options on this play. I'm not sure why. Maybe something happened pre-snap that he didn't like, that he wasn't even going to consider this part of the play. The weird thing, though, is that if you, based on what happens on this play, like if you're going to read this as a zone read, right, then you're reading the unblocked defender, which is the defensive end right here. And if this defensive end crashes down, the read is that actually Minshew keeps this and runs. If he stays put, then you hand this off. But as you can see, the defensive end is clearly crashing down. So you'd think the correct thing to do in this situation is for Minshew to actually hold on to this ball and run. The only reason I could see maybe he didn't do that is because it's the preseason, and it was just like, we're not going to have the quarterback run and take an unnecessary hit in the preseason. But from my eyes, like, you see him crashing down, like the right move based on the read is to run this ball for Minshew, not to hand it off. But he ended up handing this off to Carson Steele. And part of the reason Carson Steele had a minimal gain is because the end was crashing, and part of it was that Josh Simmons had a rough rep. For all the good things we've said about him and we've noticed, there are going to be some bad ones too. He's a rookie, and every lineman loses sometimes. But in this case, he gets beaten to the inside, and his man is absolutely ready to meet Carson Steele right as this run is getting going. So he gets sandwiched between Simmons' guy and the end crashing down. Gets a minimal gain maybe of, let's call it 2 maybe? Yeah, maybe 2 yards. Good job falling forward. So from this side, we can see, like, if you look at Minshew, like, doesn't seem to be paying any attention to the numbers over there. So for whatever reason, this was not going to happen as far as the pass option. Now, if you look at him, look at his eyes. He is reading that defensive end, which is what you're supposed to do. He's the unblocked guy. And if he looks like he's coming that way, you keep the ball and go. If he is hanging out here, hand this off going in that direction. Well, he's coming that way, but Minshew hands it off anyway. And as you can see, I think hesitation here was just in case Minshew did keep it, but he didn't. But if you look at it, the way, if Minshew had kept it, like, he's out of position. He's going to outrun the defensive end. The safety is the only one with a hope of catching him at that point. And let's look at Simmons over here. Goes out to meet the edge, but definitely gives up the inside shoulder fairly quickly here. But again, you see what people have been talking about. This is his move. He gets his hands outside and kind of that's where he tries to control the defender from. And to his credit, he's played something close to 20 snaps in the preseason and has not had a holding call yet. So we'll see if he kind of continues to vary his technique and attack defensive linemen a little bit more. Although his pass pro in general, his style seems to be working. But in this case, lost there, and the Chiefs get a minimal gain on a run play. All right, so now we have a second and about 8-ish, and the Chiefs come out here in 11 personnel again, running a lot of 11 personnel in the preseason, which is interesting because it feels like teams are trending towards slightly heavier formations offensively throughout the league. And we're seeing a lot of 11 from the Chiefs this preseason, although it is just the preseason, so we'll see. Their running back here, Carson Steele. Tight end here is Noah Gray. That one running back, one tight end gets you 11 personnel. And we've got 3 wide receivers. This looks like Jalen Royals down here, Juju Smith-Schuster up here, and Tyquan Thornton at the very top. Take a look at this play and we'll break it down. We've got Minshew out of the shotgun. Gray comes in motion, comes back, sets tight. Handoff from Minshew. Carson Steele met pretty quickly, but is able to push forward with Trey Smith's help. Gain about 5 yards. So let's go back and take a look at this. This one also kinda looks like it could be an RPO. I would guess it's probably not, because this would not be the most creative route combination for an RPO. Juju comes up and he does turn and make himself available, kind of boxing out the defender. Thornton ends up getting pushed to the ground, but the thing about an RPO is you need something that comes open quickly, right? Because the offensive line is blocking as if it's a run, and you're going to have ineligible men downfield if you're holding the ball too long as the quarterback. So when you run an RPO, you're expecting to see a pass concept that allows you to get the ball now. So maybe, but this would not be Andy's most creative RPO. My guess is this is just a run play that is kind of made to look a little like an RPO to keep the defense honest, but I think this is a run 100% of the time. And basically what the Chiefs are doing, they are blocking down these 3, and Trey is pulling to the hole, really trying to get to this linebacker here, and it's Noah Gray's job to kick out this end. So Simmons and crew are just down blocking the line that way. Gray has got to get in here and kick out the end, and Smith comes through to clear the way for the linebacker. And the kind of reason why this play doesn't pop is because Noah Gray is not able to adequately kick out this defensive end. So as Trey Smith comes in to really lay the wood here and create an opening for Steele, he actually gets impeded by Gray. As you see, he runs into Noah Gray's back, and so is not able to generate the momentum he wants to clear this hole. He ends up making his block, but again, Gray has created the tiniest fissure here. So Steele doesn't have a lot of ways to go, and the linebacker is actually able to get an arm on him as he's trying to get through the hole. You have the other clean linebacker here coming over to help out. And honestly, this is the positive for Steele. When you look at the qualities of the different running backs, Steele's quality is that he will, get hit at the 40 and can continue to drive forward and pick up some yardage. He gets another yard or 2, but ultimately, this is a play that started here at the, looks like the 37. Oh, sorry, the 42, let's say, or 43. Let's see where the ball snapped. Yeah, at the 43-yard line. So Steele does manage to kind of knife through and get a yard or two, and then just keeps his feet churning and churning, and ultimately falls forward. Looks like he gets maybe inside the 39-yard line. So Trey Smith, of course, was a huge help there. On that note, for just as a discussion about the proposed tush push ban in the offseason, really, if you're looking to ban the tush push, then you're looking to ban this too. Trey Smith and then ultimately Noah Gray, like trying to help move the pile forward. I think that's a part of this that fans aren't really considering. Like the tush push ban essentially is saying that you can't push players, offensive players, to move them forward. So this would be another aspect of the game that would go away if the tush push were to be banned. Not making a judgment on whether it should be or not, just saying that there's more to it than just the Eagles play that they run that would be banned if this ban were to go into effect. All right, so we can see it here from the end zone view. Again, we're kind of blocking down here. Smith is coming through to hit the hole, and ideally Noah Gray kicks out this end to create a nice gap for Smith to run through and then Steele to follow him. But as you see, Gray gets pushed backwards right into Smith, prevents Smith from getting through and clearing that area out. The hole that they're able to create is minimal and good on Steele for pushing through this and ultimately getting some decent yardage. All right, so now we've got another third down for the Chiefs offense. They are coming out here in 11 personnel again. One running back, Carson Steele. Tight end is Noah Gray. And the three wide receivers, this looks like Juju. This is Jalen Royals, and this is Tyquan Thornton. Let's take a look at the play, and then we'll break it down. We've got Minshew in the shotgun. Juju comes across the formation in motion. And we've got 2x2, fakes the handoff and throws a quick slant to Tyquan Thornton. Easily gets the first down, gets down inside the 25-yard line. So, what happened here? We got Juju going in motion, and then ultimately this is an RPO. So, basically you're going to get a flat and a slant. And if you look at this, it looks like Minshew's reading this linebacker. So if this linebacker gets some width and makes this slant difficult, then I think Minshew's going to hand it off. But if you watch the linebacker here, he stays put. Hangs out. So Minshew knows as he stays put that there's going to be a window here for him to throw this. So with the linebacker staying put, he makes the decision to throw this. I think that Thornton does a good job. Look at him on his slant. He does a good job not flattening this too much and running into the linebacker, right? Look at how vertically he takes this slant. Stay up in the hole. Don't run into the defender. And look at the ball placement from Minshew. He keeps it behind him because he wants to make sure, if you lead him here, you might give the linebacker a chance to undercut this. So all in all, a good read. Linebacker stays put. You're going to have a window. Good read from the receiver to make sure that you keep this up the field. Don't make this a harder throw or put the ball in danger by running this flat toward the linebacker. Keep it up the field. And then thirdly, great ball placement from Minshew to make sure I'm throwing this in that hole. Like, yes, it's behind the receiver, but that's where the ball had to be here. If you throw this to lead the receiver, there is a decent chance that this is picked off by an undercutting linebacker. So really just great play all around by the Chiefs. Results in a nice first down, keeps the chains moving, and gets just to the brink of the red zone. So you can see what Minshew's doing. Like, let's watch his helmet, and you can really see where he's looking here. So takes the snap, and look at him stare down that linebacker before he fakes the handoff. So it's in this time right here that he has decided. He's looking there. Look at him. His feet are stuck in the ground. He doesn't get any width at all. Doesn't move in that direction whatsoever. So when you see that, Minshew knows by this time when he moves his gaze, now he's starting to look over toward Thornton. Now he knows I'm throwing this ball. And the placement, perfect. Perfect. Behind him, make sure there's no chance for the linebacker to mess with it. First down. And as you see, with all RPOs, the line is run blocking. It's a similar idea to the last run play, except that we're not having great kick out here. We're down blocking, and we've got Smith coming across. And this time, Smith would be taking Gray's man that is unblocked on this side. So Gray's going to get upfield and actually block, and Smith's move is not to get upfield and hit a linebacker. He's actually coming to hit that edge. However, pass is thrown. First down, Chiefs. So now the Chiefs have a first down, and they come out in 12 personnel, changing it up a little bit. We've got one running back here, that's Carson Steele. Tight ends are Noah Gray and Jared Wiley. Wide receivers over here are Jalen Royals and Juju Smith-Schuster. So let's take a look at this play, and then we'll break it down. Got Minshew in the shotgun. Juju motions over to the right to make it a 3-by-1 formation. He hands it off to Carson Steele, and Steele falls forward for good yardage on first down. Looks to be a gain of about 6 or so. So let's break down this play because it's pretty interesting. So once Juju motions over, if you notice, this is an RPO. And this is kind of a true version of what we were talking about earlier, the triple option idea, where we kind of had Minshew could like throw, run, or pass, but they were to opposite sides of the field. Sorry, I said throw, run, or pass. Throw, run, or hand off. But the RPO was to his left and his read was to his right. So he wasn't really presented with all three options to read on one play. You know, as we said, at that point, it looked like he had decided he wasn't going to throw the RPO before the snap, and then it was just a zone read. Well, look at on this situation. So Minshew's taking the snap. We've got Juju having come on in motion, coming out for the bubble screen, and you've got two blockers, his tight ends in front of him. So he's got this pass option. He's got the handoff option to Carson Steele. And then if he wanted to, he could hold this and run. So it's interesting the decisions he has to make here. Really, like, the reason to hold this ball in the first place would be if the defensive end out here was crashing down to add to the numbers. Because if you look right here, especially, like, I like the fact that they have the motion into the bubble screen here, because that really drags out this linebacker here. So you've got 1, 2, 3 out here. That leaves 5 on 5 in the box here. So this is a really favorable situation to run because the defensive end is so far out here. He's got no chance. Now, if the defensive end were to crash down behind this play, then Minshew can hang on to this ball and he can decide if he has an alley to run or if he wants to throw this bubble screen. But in this situation, since the defensive end held it, he hands it off to Carson Steele. This kind of triple option play actually reminds me of a play that the Chiefs ran way back in Super Bowl 58 against the 49ers. Let's take a look at that one. It's a little different, but it gives you the same flavor. All right, so this is from the third quarter of Super Bowl 58 with the Chiefs down 10-3 and having a first down at their own 35-yard line. We don't have to kind of belabor the analysis of this play because this isn't a Super Bowl 58 film review. But if you look at this play, again, Mahomes has some options. Here he's got the handoff option to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then as he pulls it, he's got passing option to Noah Gray, and he's got Rashee Rice coming across the middle here. And then additionally, MVS is coming out here. This seems more of like a clear out though. This doesn't seem like a quick pass option that would be necessary for an RPO. But you see he's got the handoff option. He's got the potential pass coming over here. And then he's got the run. And he ends up taking the run option and gaining 22 yards. But a similar kind of triple option situation, although this time the pass wasn't the bubble screen that we saw in this preseason game. And the initial read, he holds it because Nick Bosa is crashing hard. So he holds it here and notices he's got a big lane to run, so doesn't dump it off to Noah Gray. Instead, just takes off with it and has a big gain. But getting back to our preseason game, this play here, Minshew reads the end. The end is out wide, so he hands it to Steele. And look at the movement from the offensive line. Look at these four just moving bodies. Like we said, great numbers here. We've got 5-on-5. Joshua Simmons is able to kind of stonewall his edge, and the rest of them are moving people down the field. So Carson Steele gets a healthy gain of, it's like 6 or maybe even 7. You can see it here from the end zone view. So you see Minshew is looking out to the end to read him. This is the first read here. Since the end is not crashing down, you hand this ball off and it's just too easy here. You know, the play design was nice. They ended up with a hat on a hat for everybody, and look at the line go, just moving bodies. Simmons kind of played this to a duel, but that's good enough in this situation. Everybody else is moving. Simmons' man ends up influencing the play from behind, but Steele again does a great job of falling forward, getting a good gain on first down. So now we have a second and manageable after that first down run by Carson Steele. The Chiefs line up in 12 personnel again. They've got their running back is Elijah Mitchell now. It looks like his first time on the field in this game. The two tight ends are Jared Wiley and Noah Gray. So that gets you 12 personnel, one running back, two tight ends. Skyy Moore is making an appearance on the field now, and Tyquan Thornton is the other wide receiver. So we'll take a look at this play, and then we'll break it down. We got Minshew taking the shotgun snap. Drops back to throw, and unable to connect with Jared Wiley over the middle. Tight coverage from Reek Woolen results in an incompletion. So what's happening on this play, you've got a shallow cross from Jared Wiley, and you've got a kind of deeper curl, like a sit route in the middle of the field from Noah Gray. Thornton is running a clear out, and Skyy Moore is running an out. And what it looks like is that Minshew is reading Gray first, Gray's route 1, and then coming to the shallow cross 2. So not much point like determining who's open over here, because once he got to number 2, he was confident making that throw. It's one thing you always want to remember when you're looking at film is you want to try your best to understand what the quarterback's progressions are, because if he likes a throw earlier in the progression, it doesn't matter if a receiver that was later in his progression gets open, because he's not looking at them until, he's only going to look at them if his earlier progressions aren't open in his mind. So Minshew takes the snap. He looks to be looking to Gray, and he comes off of Gray and throws this to Wiley. Now, Wiley, has shown to have a pretty good release. He got open very nicely against Nick Emanuari, but it's different coming against Reek Woolen. He actually gets a good release right here, too, and there's kind of a natural rub that happens with the underneath linebacker. And so he gets early separation, but Reek Woolen is long and faster, and so he closes that gap really quickly. Minshew looks like he decides to throw it about here. Like here's where he's made the decision to throw, and Woolen is already kind of closing. So I can understand, we'll be able to see in just a minute about where he comes off. It looks like around here is when he turns to look at Wiley instead of Gray. And unfortunately, Gray's about to be right there. It feels like it was the wrong decision to come off of Gray here. If he had hung with Gray for just a second, and it's not like, coming off of, onto Wiley, maybe it's the earlier trust from hitting him on a crosser earlier in this drive, but though he had early separation, I mean, admittedly, when Minshew was not looking at him early in this route, by the time he gets over the middle, like, you've got a faster guy, long defender, known good defensive back closing, and this window ends up being so tight. Minshew actually gets the ball in there. Wiley's not able to get two hands up for it, and so, trying to snag that ball one-handed is a real tall task. And it ends up going incomplete. But let's see in detail more about what I was talking about with the progression. You can see Minshew here takes the snap, and you can see he's looking at Gray as his first option. Now, unless he feels rushed here, I don't really see a reason to come off of Gray. But he does somewhere around here. He's kind of looking at Gray, but this looks like a route that's going to pop open. His defender is staying over the top. He's got depth, and he's still moving in that direction. And that Gray's going to come sit. So he does right here, and he's open. You can see it over here. Gray, if this ball is thrown with anticipation, like right now, when Gray turns his head, boom, he's there. He's got separation. That's an easy first down. So it's unclear to me why Minshew came off of that, because it's not like, Kingsley, maybe he felt that, Kingsley initially saw some pressure from the outside, but Minshew actually ended up having time in the pocket to wait on Gray. But at this point, he comes off of him, and you can see the coverage is already pretty tight when Minshew is deciding to throw right about now. It's not like, Wiley came off. He had a little separation. Woolen closed it. And by this point, this is just a really tight window. It's a good throw, though. Look, he throws it into that window. Wiley's not able to get that right hand up to it, which might have given him a chance to try to make this catch. But it does look like maybe it was a little bit out of his reach. But you're not going to catch this ball going up with one hand. In any case, I do wish, and maybe this is overly nitpicky, someone may correct me here, but it really does feel like if he just hangs on with Gray here, that's a first down throw to Noah Gray, and we wouldn't be in the third down situation that we will come to on the next snap. All right, so now we've got third down play in the red zone, third and about 4-ish. And the Chiefs come out here in 11 personnel. They've got one running back, that's Elijah Mitchell right here. Their one tight end is Robert Tonyan, making his first appearance in the game. The wide receivers are Juju Smith-Schuster, Jalen Royals, and Tyquan Thornton. So let's take a look at what the Chiefs did on this third down, and then we'll break it down. Got Minshew coming in and directing the protections here, and he drops back into the shotgun. He takes a snap, a little bit of pressure from his left side, but he gets a pass over to Juju Smith-Schuster, who's immediately cut down by Kobe Bryant. Great tackle short of the first down marker and bringing up fourth down. Now, it's a shame that this did not result in a first down, because this was Andy being Andy. This was great play design. Andy does such a good job against man coverage, making defenders run through a lot of muck, and he did the same again. So the idea here is basically a double pick is set for Juju Smith-Schuster coming across the formation. It starts by Tonyan coming up to his man and essentially trying to get his man back to have Reek Woolen have to run over him. Then step 2 is Royals coming in, because this is ultimately a mesh concept. So Royals is coming in, and he's trying to get in the way of Reek Woolen as Juju comes by. Royals does a really good job of doing this and not contacting the defender. So let's watch this. As Juju comes up, look at Tunyon first and look at the timing to make sure that A, he doesn't run into Juju, and look at Juju cut off behind his hip right there, and Tunyon trying to just make this hard on Woolen. So getting up the field, trying to get his guy in the way, and the linebacker is scraping over here over the top as this route is coming out here. So another added level. So that works. Juju already has great separation. Look at that. He's running free. Then the next guy is Jalen Royals. Jalen Royals is coming across, again, getting in Woolen's way, but does a good job of not just picking him off directly. So Juju wide open, completely running free. The only downside is that Kobe Bryant sees it from his deep safety position, and he sees it right here. Look at him put his foot in the ground, and he's like, oh, okay. I see Juju coming across free. And he drives on it very early. Like, Minshew doesn't throw the ball until now. Bryant has already put his foot in the ground and is going. He's got a step before the ball comes out of Minshew's hands. And so once Juju collects it, he doesn't have a chance to turn and get set and avoid this hit. And it's just a great hit from Bryant. Takes his legs out and doesn't give Juju a chance to fall forward for the first down. My one critique, and again, you can tell me if this is valid. The one critique I have of Minshew is that, and maybe it's just not possible because unfortunately Kingsley had a pretty bad rep. We'll get to that in a second. But Kingsley had a pretty bad rep, beat to the outside, and so Minshew kind of was on the move, and his moving away allowed Trey Smith's man to get an angle on him. So he didn't have a ton of time. But in theory, if Minshew is able to hang on to this ball just a little bit longer, which now that I'm watching this, like, this is probably too much to ask of him. But if he had a good pocket, if you hold on to this ball for just a second longer and create a conflict for him, if the safety drives before you throw this, I mean, you can hit Thornton on the post for a touchdown. He's got no help. But unfortunately, now most quarterbacks, I figure, will just throw this ball anyway because, like, they're just trying to get the first down. This is third down. You hope that Juju is just going to make this. It would take a spectacular tackle to stop him, and a spectacular tackle is what we got. Kobe Bryant made the play. But it is too bad that if he has a clean pocket and can survey, there's no rush to make this throw, and that, like, he's running free of his defender. The only guy that could possibly ruin this for you is this guy. If you're able to look him off, keep your eyes downfield to hold him back here, then Juju's wide open. Or if he drives on this like he did and you're able to hold it, you get the wide open post for a touchdown. But, it was just played perfectly by the Seahawks, and I think it would be too harsh to criticize Minshew for this one because he's on the run. His, window is closing. He's just got to get rid of this ball. He doesn't really have the opportunity to work through and think through what I was describing with putting the safety in conflict. Unfortunately, Chiefs aren't able to convert the first down. But what an awesome play and well executed by the Chiefs pass catchers. So you see on this one, again, Simmons, again, using that kind of outside technique where I don't know why it worries me so much that he's going to be, because he's kind of bear hugging guys a little bit, and I wonder how that is going to be called. He wasn't called in this game, so I don't know. But Kingsley, this is where things are tough for him, right? The Chiefs have been sliding Creed over to help him, and I imagine they're going to be doing that for most of the year. This is a way that, you can help out a guard that is struggling in pass protection more than you can a tackle. At least more than the Chiefs would a tackle. But Kingsley's real issue has been that he gets struggles moving laterally, even though he is a pretty athletic guy. And that was a bigger problem at tackle Fortunately, it's going to be less of a problem at guard because he's moving in smaller spaces against less agile guys. But every once in a while, you get beat to the outside, and that's what happened there. Not a good rep from Kingsley. Simmons really, he moves so well. Like, you just watch his feet and the way he's able to stay in front of people. The only worry I have with him is that I just hope this technique he uses doesn't draw the ire of the officiating. But you do wonder if, Kingsley's movement here, and honestly, I didn't realize it initially. Kingsley's pressure that he allowed and then Minshew's movement, I mentioned that it allowed 94 to kind of have a free run at him, but also this is a little bit of a late stunt because you see the defensive end does kind of spike Trey Smith and the tackle's looping around, but it is too bad that if he had a clean pocket, Thornton, there's no safety in the middle of the field. Like, if Thornton is able to, this is just an easy touchdown if he's able to hold that ball and the safety still commits. Now, maybe if he holds it, the safety doesn't commit, but then a later throw gets a first down here. Again, not Minshew's fault. Nothing he could do really with that pressure, and unfortunately, you got to tip your cap. Great play by the deep safety, Kobe Bryant there. So now the Chiefs decide to go for it on 4th and short. And they come out here in 22 personnel. That's 2 running backs. Elijah Mitchell, Carson Steele, 2 tight ends, Noah Gray, Jared Wiley, and their lone wide receiver is Skyy Moore. So let's take a look at their 4th down play. We'll break it down. When you see this alignment, did anyone have any doubt that in the preseason this would be a fullback dive? The Chiefs loved the fullback dive a couple years ago, then they tried to run some wrinkles off of it. It only makes sense that they would run this play in the preseason, when they're testing out and putting stuff on film. Carson Steele tries to get over the right side, ultimately does not get the first down, and the Chiefs turn the ball over on downs. Looking at it, the Chiefs kind of really did, the line did their job. Wiley did a good job of getting everybody down. There are 2 things that don't make sense to me on this play, and let's look at it from the end zone view to really see it more clearly. Look at the way that this space was cleared here. Wiley, Smith, they really did a great job of moving everybody over. If you'll notice, the line is unbalanced here, right? So they took Jalen Moore and they moved him over to the left side. So this is still fine as long as you follow the rules of alignment. If you look back here, the way that they've lined up, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 offensive linemen, ineligible receivers. They all need to be covered. So Skyy Moore covers Jalen Moore. Jared Wiley covers Trey Smith. And Jared Wiley is not covered. You see Noah Gray that's not Noah Gray, that's Robert Tonyan. I called him Noah Gray earlier. Robert Tonyan is set off. So even though the center is here and has 3 offensive linemen to the left and only 1 to the right, this is still a legal formation because they have the 5 ineligibles. They're covered, and the eligible receiver here, Jared Wiley, is not covered. So you can move them around if you want to, and they did here. So they're lined up unbalanced to this side. I wonder if part of it is to threaten this pitch to Mitchell. They did get the linebacker to move over there, but look at the blocking to the right side did what they're supposed to do. Now, the 2 things that I don't understand. One is maybe it's just because he was right on the line, but Tonyan was a little late at getting the inside guy here. When you're down blocking everybody and trying to get somebody over here, they're both worrisome, and I understand, this backer, 52, is right on the line, so Tonyan gets to him first, but he's not able to get the second guy as much as you'd like. And the second guy is the guy, it's just like talk about getting the inside guy when you have two blitzers and your alignment, you're trying to get the inside guy who has the shortest path, especially when his path is in this direction. So, like, obviously getting a hand on him while this guy's coming in is important, but you'd hope to get over to the inside guy enough that he's the priority guy to really impede. The other part I don't understand is I don't understand why Carson Steele, if you're going to leave your feet, like we just talked about earlier, how he's good at driving a pile, right? So just put your head down and get right into him if you're going to contact him. But if you're going to leave your feet, it should not be to contact someone, right? You leave your feet to jump over people. If you want to contact people, you want your feet on the ground so you can get leverage and drive into them. So if you're going to go at him, keep your feet down. If you're going to jump that way. Like, jump into the open space over people, not into a defender. So I don't understand, this to me looks like it should have been possible. This should have been converted. I feel like the blocking was good enough if he follows, and if he wants to leave his feet to go that way, I feel like that works. Or if he wants to just drive, put his shoulder down, and maybe because Wiley's on the ground, he can't drive, and that's the problem. Well, then, if you're going to leave your feet, don't jump into the defender. Like, you don't have your leverage. You're trying to hop over a guy. So if you're going to hop over a guy, you want to continue in this direction where you're unimpeded. And you don't need that much. So I was a little confused by those two aspects of this play. I feel like Tanyan didn't do enough to get to the inside guy quickly enough because he's your real... They're both threats, obviously. You can't just ignore a guy that's on the line of scrimmage. But he's the guy that has the inside track to getting to Steele, and I feel like Tanyan was a little late getting over to him. And then Steele's decision to jump into a defender, I don't really understand. In any case, didn't work out for the Chiefs. They turned it over on downs, and that was it for the starting-ish offense. The starters minus Kelsey, Mahomes, and Jawan Taylor. Well, Skyy Moore he's had a tough time in Kansas City. He's had his up and downs, and unfortunately, even though he had some memorable moments in the 22 playoff run with that punt return in the AFC Championship game and then the touchdown in the Super Bowl, he's, besides having a good game in week 2 and 23 against the Jaguars, he's had a rough go of it. I have always liked Skyy Moore. I felt bad for him. I always wish that things panned out, and I don't like, I'm a fan. I don't like it when things don't work out for players. I don't like piling on people, and I know Skyy Moore had a couple drops in this game, and it really is looking like with the receiver numbers, like maybe this might be a year that he doesn't make the team. And so because of that, he had a big play at the end of this game, and I just want to look at it, and if this is it for Skyy Moore, let's send him off with something happy. So let's take a look at the punt return that he had toward the end of this game. Let's look at it, and then we'll break it down. Seahawks in punt formation, punt it over toward their right. Skyy Moore is drifting over to the left of the numbers on his side near the sideline. Initially cuts in and then goes down the sideline, cuts it back inside, and no one is home. He takes it 88 yards for a touchdown. Big play for him. And as you'll see in a minute, pretty exciting for his teammates. All right, so the first thing to note on this punt for me is that it's unclear whether the Seahawks were all on the same page here. Because the punter, if you look at the way that he's standing, and let's take a look at it from this angle, he seems very intentionally trying to punt the ball in this direction, right? This isn't an accidental shank. He's trying to punt the ball toward the sideline on this side. Then that being said, you have some coverage that men that are not running and covering the field as if there is a punt going to the right sideline. Like, these two are going straight, which is fine, but typically you would expect like everybody kind of forming this kind of shape, right, as they're running. You got to cover the sideline and then you got to cover the cutback. But I cannot understand why you'd have people going this way if you're anticipating a punt to the right. So there seems to be some kind of miscommunication. Usually you see this when the punter like shanks something or accidentally kicks it somewhere else. But like, we're not getting guys coming over here until they start seeing the flight of the ball. Whereas the punter seemed to know from the beginning this is what he wanted to do. So the end result when you look at this is that this field is a lot more spread out than one would anticipate. Although they do kind of close down toward the end, it is interesting to see that they started apparently not on the same page. However, by the time he catches the ball, you kind of are developing what we're talking about here. However, they didn't cover to the sideline. And this is where the Chiefs, I feel like, did a very good job. Skyy Moore's initial move to the inside was enough to get the gunner to not cover the sideline entirely. And then after getting by the gunner, look at the job by Chiefs blockers here and here, keeping everyone inside. I should add this one too. Now you only have like 3 people that are right there that are able to cover the sideline, because like I said, we have a lot of people that are coming. Like everyone over here is coming from pretty far away. So the only people that end up having any hope of covering the sideline are 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, that ended up not being true because he got outstripped by this person. So it was really 1, 2, 3, 4 were the defenders that had any hope of covering the sideline. And look at what happens. Skyy Moore makes a move on 1 by coming in and out, and then you've got block, block, block on the other 3. And so it just opens up completely for him down the sideline. Then got a guy on the punter, and he just cuts it back inside, and there's nothing. Like, they just allowed a hole up the sideline. Nobody kind of was able to get there to cover, and like I said, a lot of the team had to cover a lot of ground just to get back over to the sideline because they didn't seem to initially be set up for a return for a punt in this direction, which I don't understand because the punter very clearly punted it there intentionally. And Skyy Moore, for the troubles that he's had, he's a guy that will outrun people in open space. So watch this again. Clearly the punt going over to the right. Not sure particularly what's happening over here. But then when you get to sideline coverage, this gunner is unable to force the sideline. And look at the Chiefs blockers do a good job of getting lined up here to protect the sideline. So guys are in position, keeping guys. Look at that. Boom, boom, boom. So once Skyy Moore makes one guy miss, he just fakes in and gets out. That's enough for him to get by the gunner. He's coming full speed. Nobody else has a chance. Very well executed return by the Chiefs. Well done by Skyy Moore. And if this is it for Skyy Moore, I'm glad it was something happy. And wish him the best of luck wherever he ends up.